now time to look at what the papers are saying on their front pages. Dr. Constance is here with us. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ndi. A very good morning to Nkechi and Adesuwa.
Good morning.
Very yellow this morning, Adesuwa.
Bright as
very
the sun.
white, the rest of you. Okay, so this morning we have to examine the newspapers with us. Dr. Law Mefo, he is in the offsite studio. Dr. Law is a columnist and senior lecturer at the International Institute for Journalism in Abuja. Welcome, Dr. Law Mefo. We'll start with This Day newspaper, our sister publication. The story that we'll be looking at is NRC. Nigeria needs $66 billion to effectively deliver rail transport infrastructure nationwide. This was according to the MD of Nigerian Railway Corporation, Fidet Ohiria. Remember that back in 2017, then Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amechi, said Nigeria needed $16 billion to construct modern railways. And he said we did not have the money. I think the same thing is being said today again, that we do not have the funds to execute these massive projects. Ohiria said Nigeria needs to connect the southern parts of the country by rail and other regions too. This will impact the economy, he explained. I mean, the benefits of rail are tremendous. We already know that. I don't know if any of you has taken the Abuja-Kaduna train. It's very easy, convenient, comfortable. And I think when you ride that route, it sort of helps you to understand and see why rail transport is a huge benefit for the country. Dr. Law.
You mean rail?
Yeah, rail transport, yes.
I think rail transport has to be recovered. I believe it is responsible for why Nigerian highways are in total state of disrepair. Because loads, heavy-duty loads that need to be hauled through the rail all pass around the country by road. So the roads cannot stand the wear and tear. So whatever can be done to recover the rail transport must be done. Yes, the amount mentioned is huge, but it's a national priority. Our roads have verged into what I want to call a national emergency. You just can't find pliable roads between the north and south and between the regions of the country. So we need to do something to reconnect all of them. We just have to. If you go back in time, you will see that the colonialists linked up the north and south Nigeria by rail. And we haven't been able to improve upon what they did. There has been some efforts, some of them are yet to really yield the kind of fruits we need or we require. You need to do a lot more. That is just the simple truth. And let me simply say that when you borrow money from wherever, it should be essentially for such a critical infrastructure and national interventions. So if the federal government is taking loans, it should be channeled to issues like this, because in the long run, the interventions will be able to pay back the loans. So that's how I see it. I see it as a very necessary national intervention. We should make efforts to get the rails working again.
Right. Nobody answered my question. Has any of you taken the Abuja-Kaduna train?
I have not.
I haven't, actually.
Okay. I highly recommend it. That was before the terrorists started attacking the railway stations. But I recommend you take it. I think you would be proud of what we did there. I think they also have the train within Abuja now, from inside Abuja to the airport. My cousin has taken that one, and she said it was very good. Anyway, the point is that we need to expand on infrastructure. And it's good that we've already identified how much is needed for this infrastructure. It is huge. Rail network, rail infrastructure is very expensive across the whole world. When you travel to the developed world, if you see the level and the class of trains, you know that this is big money. However, the point is, if you have the requirements, or if you know the requirements, then that's what planning is for. You can begin to plan, and then there's also continuity. Because one of the problems is that a government might start something, the next government doesn't continue. So you want that continuity to be there in order to achieve projects that are more long-term, Adesowa.
Indeed, and I like the point you made, talking about planning, because if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And that's what we've seen with majorly infrastructure development in this country. So 7 years ago, when this whole particular train project, which Mr. O'Hare is talking about, when it was first brought up, the Minister of Transportation, I believe then was Mr. Amechi, it cost the country $16 billion. At that time, the minister said, oh, you don't go plucking $16 billion, it's expensive. Yes. But look at, how much is it now going to cost us? $66 billion. So this issue of kicking the can down the road really doesn't pay us. And I don't know why we do it. Thankfully, it's one of the things that came up at the Federal Executive Council yesterday. Yes, we say government is a continuum, but it also has its challenges when we see projects like this that just span unnecessarily, and then it costs us more. Of course, you see corruption, you see inflation, and so we end up, one, not having this infrastructure. If we do eventually have it, it makes no economic sense anymore, because we could have done it at a cheaper price. That's one problem. Another problem I see is when Mr. O'Hare complains about, governments, asking the relevant question, is it viable to have this infrastructure, and how much can we recoup as a government from such projects? Yes, rail projects can be viable. It's done everywhere in the world. We need to ask ourselves about the business model we put into these things. Must it be solely government? If it's not solely government, have we done enough to attract the private investors? That's one. Two, we have a situation on the ground where we don't even have enough trains to cover the country, yes? But we have a situation where Nigerians will go and steal the infrastructure for the trains to move.
Right.
I mean, it's trains for them. Then you also have a situation where even the railway corporation workers themselves are fleeting the people, fleeting the government, because they will racketeer the tickets. They will buy tickets and then go and sell at a cheaper rate for people just to make money. So there is no way you can make profits, and there's no way that business can survive if you have things like this on. Right. It's a potpourri of things that we need to look at.
Right. Those are challenges, but the fact remains that we need to build this infrastructure.
Definitely.
Yeah, there are problems here and there. Like the Abuja one, there was the issue of starting it and then starting, and then when you eventually pick it up, the price has ballooned. So again, continuity, you want to do it, and every next government that comes into power, sort of is focused on it and determined to finish it, because it is in the interest of the nation indeed.
It takes me back, I think 1975, when I used to go by train, to school then at Government College in Moya Fisher High School. You have here in this day, FEC steps down when, excuse me, when this was talking about stepping down. FEC steps down major project memos from previous governments needing more funding. You talked about one challenge. The second challenge is maintenance that we seem to have in this country. Something starts, maintaining it becomes another problem entirely. And before you know it, the funds go wasted, thrown down the drain. It will be a very fantastic, especially for haulage, taking massive goods from one part of the country to another. And all over the world, China is known for its train services, tubes, they are called in UK or America, and then even commuters park their cars. It makes it easy,
right?
For commuting. You enter the train, go to where you want to go and come back.
Yeah.
So it's a thing that is welcome, but then all these have to be factored in, and then of course the cost, and then we're good to go.
Yeah, that's when you build metropolis and you have people living in suburbs, and then they take the train, to town. Abuja, for instance, is becoming very crowded in terms of the amount of vehicles, because over the last 3 or 4 years, so many people have moved into Abuja. We're going to be talking about urban swelling, in this segment. And so you want to begin to ease that traffic and that tension through the provision of infrastructure such as this, Nkechi.
I think this is a very important topic that we're discussing, and I think everyone has said it all. The issue of inflation ballooning the cost of our infrastructure, 2017, 16 billion. Even earlier this year, when this rail issue was mentioned, I think it was that we needed 35 billion, and now it's a whopping $66 billion. And so when there's no continuity, when you fail to plan and you move projects that are very important actually to the infrastructure of Nigeria, Indy mentioned free movement of goods, free movement of people, affordable as well for the people, then you now get to this point where the money just keeps increasing. And I think I have a slogan for this issue: Nigeria, well, rail budgets grow faster than the trains run. And also we talk about maintenance of what we have right now. How are we maintaining it? How are we, how effective is it? We need to actually learn from what we have. Are we collecting data from the ones that we already have on ground, how it's working, why it's not working, and how we can improve? Because it seems that in Nigeria, the issue is always funding. We need funding, we need funding, we need funding. But there are always other factors that we need to consider when we're trying to build something new and improve what we already have.
Great. We'll move on to Vanguard newspaper. Vanguard, here we have the story: will regulate price of imported foodstuffs, federal government. When the food arrives in Nigeria, we're going to be importing some food. There was reported a couple of days ago. There will be recommended retail price. This is aimed at crashing the prices of food. The Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kyari, says he's confident food prices would fall within the next 180 days. Well, what we are seeing is a government that is trying to stem the negative tide. It is trying to listen and to respond to what people are saying. There have been, so many criticisms against the government. It has been getting flack even from lawmakers saying it is not listening to what Nigerians are saying. So the government is at this point trying, and that is why it reported that a few days ago import duties and taxes will be removed on certain food items in order to help the country in that regard. A lot of people do not agree with the importation of food, but here we are, the government is going ahead with this. But how possible is it to enforce that recommended retail price, Dr. Mefo?
Well, I don't know how possible that is. But first, those who think we shouldn't be importing food now are not being realistic, because the food items are simply not there. I hear the argument that the problem is not availability but affordability. I don't think so. I think the problem essentially is availability. And if you want to force down prices of goods, you just have to flood the market, because at the end of the day, it's a matter of demand and supply forces are being at play. So if you have more on the supply side, certainly, even practically, you will begin to see that the demand side will also begin to respond in a positive manner. So I agree with government that we need to import foods now, but there are some missteps that I see. One is announcing the window that you need the intervention would last for 180 days. You don't need to. You don't need to announce that. Keep that close to your chest, because as you announce it, you are informing the hoarders that this is when the window would close. So they will have to mop up whatever you bring in. So even when you regulate the prices, what will happen is that the hoarders, the wholesalers, will buy off everything and store, and even export. Let me also draw our attention to something. There are two key issues responsible for food scarcity in Nigeria. In fact, food crisis, not just the food scarcity. One is insecurity. That is a different conversation altogether. The other is exportation of food from Nigeria. Border states are exporting. Why? Because the naira has become so weak that whatever you sell out there will amount to profit rather than sell it within Nigeria. So moving goods from northern part of Nigeria to southern part, you have to factor in the issue of transportation, which has tripled at least. So for border states, it's cheaper for them to sell to neighboring countries and make more money than move their goods to southern part of Nigeria. So government has to think critically on how to deal with the distribution and then police the borders to ensure that the food that is imported is not exported and the food that is imported is not hoarded.
Right.
These are the two factors. If government is able to figure out how to go about these two issues, then their hope may be fulfilled.
Well, Dr. Mefa, thank you for raising some brilliant points about hoarding, about, poor management of information, because like you said, you're already given the information on the window and people will start using it against the government, and of course the exportation of food through the borders. All of that, a complex mix of what is going on in Nigeria today. But the issue remains that it's a limited window and it's a limited items, because when you talk about flooding, they're talking about importing rice, cowpeas, wheat. Yeah, very, very limited. There's so many other food items that Nigerians need. So what will this do? And also it's for a very short period of time, indeed.
Yeah, well, 180 days. You're talking about January 2025. There's a proverb that says, you start to chase or pursue a black goat in the daytime, because when it gets to nighttime, you won't see the black goat. What really baffles me is why government, Ndume was saying, the Senator Ndume was saying that the president is unaware of what Nigerians are going through because he's locked up in the villa and people that should tell him the truth try to get through the back door, they don't allow them in. Because why does government always wait till the last moment or are not always proactive to deal with these issues?
Well, I guess that there have been attempts, but I think it hasn't been sufficient and coordinated. I think there's also a bit of confusion of what actually we have to do and what works. This one.
Yes, so we've seen this policy somersaults. We're going to have a price control board. We're not going to have a price control board. We're going to import food. We're not going to import food. And I think that Dr. Mefor really hit the nail on the head this morning, like you said. Earlier, I talked about fleecing, profiteering. While Nigerians may be the most patriotic people you have ever seen on planet Earth, and I can say that confidently, sometimes they can also be their own undoing. Why do I say so? To Dr. Mefor's point, Nigeria will feed its neighboring countries, yet we are suffering food scarcity in the country. A couple of months down the line, about a year ago, when the Tinubu administration came into power and the president removed subsidy, and then we saw, of course, these ripple effects, including the high inflation, food scarcity. There were measures put in place. But guess what? We also had our security operatives, including the customs, that were intercepting truckload of food leaving this country. So I have two questions for the government this morning. One, yes, I think it's a step in the right direction that we are importing. However, albeit short, and I think that these are the major food items you see, Nigerians really consume. We talk about wheat, butters down to bread, rice, maize, and all of that. Now, the question is, how do we ensure that this does not undermine our local capacity? Yes, we are now saying it's a short window. If we are going to extend it, we should be careful about that so that our local production does not suffer for that. And secondly, it's really the question to Dr. Mefor's point this morning and your point. How does the government ensure and ensure that, people don't profiteer. That this price control you're putting in place, really, these importers stick to it.
Right.
Those are my two questions this morning.
Right. I think at the end of the day, the government still has to tackle that insecurity. That is the major problem, and it will not go away if we don't do something about it. Let's go to Guardian newspaper. In the Guardian, we will be looking at the story on abuse, violation of urban planning laws breed homelessness and slums. It tells us that Kano, Ibadan, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, Kaduna, Onitsha, Benin City, and others are projected to become bigger by 2030, going by urban growth rate of 4.3%. Nigeria witnessed about 604 building collapses between 1974 and May 30, 2024. This data is from the Building Collapse Prevention Guild data. Well, it's probably more than that. Well, this story also tells us that Enugu, Anambra, Lagos, Abuja, and Kano have witnessed property demolitions worth 100 billion naira in the last 1.5 years. There is the information that by 2030, more Africans will be living in urban centers. There's a lot of reasons why young people are moving to urban centers. There's, the search for unemployment, for better living standards, for better life generally. And so what it tells us is that this is happening. We already have the data. Governments have to begin to think about how to manage this swelling population in very limited spaces. So when you don't have the planning, what we end up having is, of course, the crime, the unemployment, the lack of infrastructure, adequate infrastructure to cater to the population of people. This is a very important topic, and we should be looking at it critically. Dr. Mefo.
Yeah, I think there is crisis also in the housing sector. There is no doubt about that. And the urban slum are sprawling everywhere. In Abuja here, urban slum is everywhere. And in Abuja, for example, all attempts by successive FCT administrations to recover Abuja master image has been a major challenge. But it brings up one thing. Yes, you can demolish, but where was government when the buildings were being constructed? That is the question. So for me, I think that there should be a shared responsibility here. Yes, we can understand the logic that if you build on a land that is not approved, with a plan that is not approved, that you hold yourself responsible. Yes, it's easier said than done. If there are buildings properly constructed by government for low cost, medium cost, and high cost, people wouldn't have to live in slums. What that means is that what we are facing is a failure of leadership and governance. That is the problem here. So for me, two things that must be done. One is to put in place a law. That law will hold government partly responsible for illegal construction. That is to say, if you erect a building and government and its agencies allow the building to really spring up and they turn around at any point in time after an expiration of a timeline, government has to pay compensation, as far as I am concerned. Then number two, we need to liberalize further the issue of mortgage for people, more people to be drawn into the net, to build for themselves, to build and they own what we call a rent to own or owner-occupier. We need to see more of this. El-Rufai tried quite a bit when he was minister. He opened up a section of Abuja for mass housing. You have many estates. In Lokogoma area, you have well over 50 estates. We need more of that. But there has to be quality control. There has to be, the cost of mortgage has to really considerably come down. Because when you go for a mortgage, you don't even get, when you can't find collateral, and when you get at all, the cost itself outstrips the income of the average Nigerian. So what is government saying there? That the building is still for the rich. But the target ought to be the poor, ought to be the medium income earners. That is not what you have. So these three things must be tied together. The law has to be there to hold government accountable for not regulating, for not enforcing, and the mortgage system to be a bit more liberal, and for the funds that the people need to either build for themselves or join mortgages to be further liberalized. That is to say, we must find, there must be a way people can access cheap funding to either build or join a mortgage system. This is not available at the moment.
We do have the laws. We do have the laws. I think part of the problem is very poor regulation and monitoring that is going on. As you mentioned, the former minister of the FCT, Nasir El-Rufai, it depends on which minister or who is in office. If they do their job properly, then you see a difference. There is a master plan. Not in all cities in Nigeria. There is a master plan in some cities, like in Abuja. When you notice Abuja under the last administration, the Wuse2 area, for instance, it used to be a lot of residential areas. During the last administration, everything, well, not everything, a lot of the spaces have turned commercial, and you wonder, was that what it was meant for?
But he was talking about a law that holds government liable when you have these infractions. I think that's what he was saying. I'm not sure we have seen such a law or we have such a law.
How does that even operate? Holding government liable? And the government makes laws?
Because in the first instance, government approves those lands. Or, well, you don't see people who just, settlers, squatters, who just invade land and resettle.
Or maybe the agencies.
As a result of, it could be different things, insecurity, and they move. But government agencies are aware of this. And I think that, I could be wrong. I think what Mr. Mefo is saying is that government should be liable because you should be accountable. You should not, exactly, you are not responsible, you are not responsive when this was happening. You wait for the structures to take hold, and then you come and demolish.
Yes.
I don't know, I may be wrong, Dr. Mefo.
Even when,
I think it's time for break, right? We don't have much, yeah.
All right, we'll be back and continue probably with this, I don't know, but you're still watching Daybreak on Horizons, this paper review. We'll be back in a bit, stay with us.
Welcome back. You're watching the paper review on Daybreak here on the Rise News channel with Dr. Constance Ikoku, and our guest analyst this morning is it Dr. Mefo? Thank you so much. It was a columnist and a senior lecturer at the International Institute of Journalism here in Abuja. Welcome back, guys.
Mefo is not difficult to pronounce. It's not Akinkuotu. This is quite straightforward and easy, right?
Yes, and I got that right.
Yeah, Dr. Okay. Yeah, let's look at Daily Independent this morning. So, EndSars protest. Ecowas court slams federal government, finds it guilty of rights violations. It says federal government breached the fundamental human rights of Nigerian youths who took part in the October 2020 protest. Says the case of applicants was meritorious, and the judge has asked the federal government to pay each of the applicants 2 million naira as compensation for torture, inhumane and degrading treatment, violation of personal security, etc. He also asked the federal government to, within 6 months, report on measures taken to implement the judgment. Dr. Mefo, this is a big one for EndSars protesters. There was a lot of crisis during that time. Eventually, that protest was shut down. It started in other parts of the country, and eventually the Lagos one became the main focus, and stars were falling over one another in order to be part of that protest. So this ECOWAS court has given the applicants a good judgment, but will it happen? Will the federal government adhere to this judgment? What does it even mean?
The headline, I chuckled for two reasons. One is the value of the judgment itself. The amount awarded, 2 per 3. And nothing said about those who lost their lives and their families, nothing at all. Then the issue of enforceability. You see, laws, I don't think the problem we have in Nigeria, Africa, Ecowas is about absence of laws. No, it's not about absence of laws. It is about absence of enforceability. Now that we have gotten judgment, what is the value of the judgment that we have gotten? Who will enforce it? Nigerian government, I bet you, will not comply. And when Nigerian government fails to comply, what can the Ecowas court do? Can they take measures? What measures can they take? I see none. From experience, I am not aware of any judgment of the Ecowas court that has been enforced at all, not one. There may be, but if there is, I am not aware, I haven't read, I haven't heard. That said, another thing is, we must, however, say that if not anything, it has added to a kind of moral force to underscore the fact that the way the EndSars protest was put down was inhuman, was illegal, it was immoral. It got to the point that even the Lagos state government under Sanwo-Olu, an absolute gentleman, could call in the military into a purely civil affair. The EndSars protesters were unarmed. They were merely exercising their fundamental human rights of protest, which, of course, is germane and really needed in a democracy. A democracy without protest, without freedom of speech, is no democracy at all. But we saw this at play in Lagos, even in Abuja. When the protest spread to Abuja, we saw how it was put down. We saw vehicles, heavy SUVs that dropped some counter-protesters that were armed with this and that to attack EndSars protesters. And people died in the process. And if Ecowas says, pay them 2 million naira, too little, can President Tinubu do something unusual and uncommon here? I keep saying, President Tinubu taught some of us to protest. He's an activist. We learned it from him, from Nadeko days to date. I advise the president to pay.
Right.
He has to pay to drive home the point that this is democracy.
Right.
This is my take on this.
You know, I mean, it was obvious that the federal government infiltrated that protest, and that's how or why it ended the way it did. And when you look at the ECOWAS code, it seems that it's more of a moral organ now, because even in the past it was difficult to enforce any of these. So let's watch what the government is going to do. 2 million naira, like you said, is a very small.
10 million each.
Well,
I think it's 10 million.
Daily Independent says 2 million. Daily Independent says so conflicting figures. Anyway, we don't have much time. Let's go to New Telegraph and look at the story on insecurity threat to 2024 census, says the National Security Advisor. He's already warning that, yes, Nigeria wants to conduct census. It is a top priority for President Bola Tinubu. However, there are challenges or potential risk, such as, attacking the people conducting the census, kidnapping and things like that. And so it says that, the NPC, the National Population Commission, has been planning, putting together resources to make sure that Nigeria has the kind of data it needs. However, this is what we are going to face if we decide to conduct census this year at the SOA.
Oh yeah, so it's good that the National Security Advisor is telling us this. If there was any doubt as to the level of security challenges we're facing, I think now the National Security Advisor has painted it in black and white for all of us to see, to the extent that he says it will threaten the 2024 census. And I think that story goes further to say that despite the NPC saying that it has a way to work around the security challenges, the NSA is insisting and advising that it is risky given the number of deaths and attacks that have occurred so far. So the question then is, what are we doing to fix the security challenges? Because the census is important.
If you ask me, when the retinue of the challenges, security challenges, that the NSA marshaled out, somebody who is reading that will just immediately assume or think that the NSA is practically given a reason
not to
why
hold
simple. That's how it sounds. I mean, I'm not in his mind, but perspective, if you read that, the way it's coming, it looks like there's no need for the census.
Right.
And then there'll be the question, too, of who wants to go where. I mean, boasting. People will begin to not, even with what he has reeled out, people will begin to not to want to go to here
No,
or
the
there.
NPC is saying they will use local enumerators, so people who reside in those environments. So nobody needs to travel really anywhere.
Right.
And that's why the NPC is saying they can wiggle their way around the challenges. But he's saying
even
not
with
really.
the people that stay inside. The security, I mean, who do they kidnap? They don't go out to kidnap people. They kidnap people within.
Right. Nkechi, you have something to say.
Yeah, like Indy is saying, it seems like there's no hope. The insecurity is just too much. We can't do it. But it's very, very important to know the accurate population of a country. It's not just about counting head. This forms the bedrock of an effective governance. Planning, foundation of planning, resource allocation, socio-economic policies, health and social services. It's very important to know how many people you're planning for. When we're throughout the night, we have our producers planning for this show. We have the director. We know how many people are going to be in the studio, how many people are going to be in the offsite studio. We don't know how many we are in this country. And that is showing. So whether there's insecurity, we need to find a way, the people who are in charge need to find a way to fix that and make provision so that the MPC can carry out their jobs and that the government can have adequate planning.
I remember my mentor, before you come in, I remember my mentor saying that, I mean, at a stage, if you're going to, we're having a meeting, sometime, and he asked us, how are we going here? What do you see? We started reeling out problems upon problems upon problems. Then he said, you've just reeled out problems. If you reel out one problem, reel out 3 solutions. That's how to look at things.
Well, it is the job of the National Security Advisor to make sure that, there's security enough for the country to hold the census and every other thing that is happening. It's his job and his team, he understands the challenges, he knows what is going, he has the intelligence, the information that is required to make sure that all this goes away. I think generally Nigerians are hoping that he's doing his job and that he is on top of it. Let's see what the international stories are saying this morning. And we'll be looking at the Financial Times. Biden's re-election drive reels under fresh blows from Pelosi and Clooney. So actor George Clooney, who hosted a fundraiser for the president, has asked him to step down from the race. Clooney, who was a supporter of Biden, dropped his backing in a piece he wrote for the the New York Times. Also, Nancy Pelosi, a longtime politician and Democrat, has asked the president to make a decision on this quickly. When asked about calls for Biden to step down, she said, and I quote, "It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running out." Now, first of all, to Nancy Pelosi. She's been a very strong Democrat. She was the first Speaker of the House in the United States in the history of the country. She made history when she achieved that. And she has also been a stabilizing force for Democrats. The woman understands politics, she understands the dynamics, and she reads the tides. But she did not throw Biden under the bus. In fact, she left the door open for him to take the decision and to exit if he wanted to with some dignity. And that's why she said when she was interviewed that, Biden, whatever I've supported, whatever is your decision, that's what I support. But Clooney, on the other hand, a huge financial supporter has said, categorically said, you have to step down. And this is crucial because U.S. elections are very expensive, and they do need a lot of these big money backs in order to support their candidature. So Clooney jumping into the topic at this time, I think that it sort of is going to make a little bit of a dent. But at the end of the day, I think Biden has to decide what he does. What are your thoughts on this, Dr. Mefo?
Yeah, well, generally I see a kind of shrinking of the stature of leadership and leaders across the globe. That of the U.S. is quite surprising. And because I see a Biden here who the Democrats know is not quite a good candidate. But I believe they have looked within themselves, within their stock, and they can't find a match for Trump. Trump is a bulldozer. And between Trump and Biden, Biden has the matching stature, and in his heydays could have easily beaten Trump. But now there are complications. His cognitive capacity is obviously diminishing, and people can see clearly that he's no longer as coherent as he used to be when Biden was Biden. So I do think that Pelosi didn't come to the party. When Nancy Pelosi was the speaker, she was everywhere trying to whip President Trump into line. And I'm surprised she can't come clean and categorically state that Biden has to step down. I believe that, to be honest with you, the situation in the U.S. Presidential election, pitting Trump against Biden, is a kind of between the devil and the deep blue sea. The two of them are not good for the U.S., if you ask me. At a point, I was a Trumpian. I really liked the man, but he's an extremist. He's also a racist. And for me, I root for Trump even now because of Democrats as a political party, what they have done to Africa. Well, I don't think that they have favored Africa. Republicans have favored Africa more. I'm not sure that Trump will do the same. But if you look at what happened to Africa, what happened to Nigeria, what happened to Libya under the presidency of Obama, you can understand what I'm talking about. And that is why Nigeria is where we are till today. It is the problem created for us by Obama, by Cameron, playing out, using Africa as a kind of playground.
Right.
So now, in my last line on this, you see, I think the Democrats have to drop Biden. He can't go through. The next presidential debate will decide it, actually.
Okay.
And if it turns out as disastrous as the former one, then their coffin is nailed. The earlier they take that decision, the better for all of them.
Well, there is the argument, yes, that Democrats have not been good for African countries, but I don't know if the Republicans are either, because it's the same United States, it's the same government, the institutions are there. Yes, there are differences in policies because of the ideological and political leanings. However, when it comes to foreign policy, the U.S. is the same. The differences that a particular government might be able to make because of the party platform that they run on might be very insignificant. The U.S. has its policy for African countries or regions of the world pretty much cast. It's on resource exploitation, it's on domination, and I don't think it changes when a new president, a different president from different party comes into power. Then you then ask yourself, the countries in Africa, you are supposed to be sovereign countries, so yes, there is the problem that some leaders are pseudo-leaders, they have pseudo-power, they're actually not working for their people, but the countries then have to step up. But back on this Biden issue, if you say that the Democrats have to change Biden at this late hour, isn't it complicated for them, Nkechi?
I mean, it's complicated to have Biden. It's complicated to bring in someone who they think can match up to Donald Trump. What I know is that the uncertainty that's surrounding President Biden, the uncertainty within the Democratic Party is really giving Donald Trump sort of an opportunity. We know that Donald Trump capitalizes on his opponent's weakness. Donald Trump has forever called Joe Biden Sleepy Joe. And so for him to now hear from Joe Biden's own party, people saying, oh, maybe he needs to step down, maybe he's unable, or okay, whatever you decide, we will follow it. Donald Trump is going to capitalize heavily on that when it comes to this election. And I know Donald Trump has always said that, look, he's ready for another debate. He even says, look, this next debate, we don't want any, what do they call them?
Which you will not get. He's just blabbing. No, the point is when...
We have a few minutes left.
Yeah,
so
when Nancy Pelosi said it depends on him, Biden has made a decision. He said, I am not going anywhere. Exactly. And it seems like some people are just talking up the negative side. There are so many people. I listened to, what's his name, Bostic. They said that it's even quite important, the black community and the black voters and the black senators, they are rooting for Biden. And then the White House says they have enough money. You were talking about Judge Clooney being a donor. They have acquired enough money, even though you still need more, but they have enough money to run the election.
Joe Biden?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the Democratic Party.
You know, let me just say that
Briefly,
it was,
please.
it was sad to see Nancy Pelosi sort of sit on the wall here for such a Democrat that has so powerful voice. I mean, she's a former speaker. She's huge in the party. It wasn't even a tacit endorsement. There was no endorsement. She left it open for him. Meaning what exactly?
Well, no, he said if he thinks he's able, he should go ahead. That's what she said.
She was neither here nor there. She was neither here nor there. But Nancy Pelosi, it could have been categorical.
But the particular bloc that supports Biden, they're still rooting for him.
But it could have been more. She could have been more categorical to say I endorse him.
Just a few that are saying.
That's
no.
what you have to know is that Nancy Pelosi is 84.
So
she's been in this game for a very long time.
Exactly why her voice would have been more powerful.
She's very strategic, and she knows what she's doing. So if she has decided to leave the door open for the president and commander-in-chief to make his decision,
which he has
already made it.
Okay,
so I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, so let's go to Daily Graphic. Let's go to Daily Graphic. While the course continues, so he has to keep saying, what he wants to do. Daily Graphic, we have barely 2 minutes left. Armed forces record 1,300 mental disorders yearly. This is Ghana, Daily Graphic of Ghana. The mental cases have been recorded since the year 2021. 70% of the cases are male officers. And statistics showed alcohol use as the highest among the disorders. The Ghanaian Chief of Defense Staff, Major General Thomas Opong Pepra, has asked the Department of Medical Services to intervene and help the soldiers. I think when I was reading this story, it was very sobering because it brought it home. I began to think about all the soldiers that we have on the war front in the north and other parts of the country, trying to keep us stable, fighting terrorism and banditry, for more than 10 years now. You have to ask, do these soldiers get, the kind of help they need mentally? We don't discuss mental issues a lot in Nigeria. I think we should create a situation where it's easy to talk about it and people get the help that they need. Dr. Mefo, we have less than 1 minute.
Okay, I think like you find in forensic and clinical psychology, what you call mental status examination. And then, of course, the issues that have to do with a post-traumatic stress disorder. For military men and the police who have seen combat, they go through all this all the time. When you talk about trauma, we in psychology refer to trauma as a near-death experience. So you can be sure that a soldier who has seen a combat has passed through that experience. And we need to have more of psychological interventions, debriefing, getting them to really come to terms with what they are going through. Most of these things may be taught in the classroom during the military training to become a soldier. But when you come into the battlefield, it's a different ball game. When a colleague of yours falls beside you and is dead, you know that it could have been you. All I am saying is that we need to do more in intervening. It's not just a Ghanaian thing. It is the experience with the military all over the world, and even more so in Nigeria. Because many of our soldiers are in the battle line. They are going through a lot. Psychologists need to be mobilized to help. I'm not seeing much of that in Nigerian experience.
All right, we'll be leaving it there, but just to add that the finals on Sunday of the Euros will be between England and what's the other team? Spain. Oli Watkins, 90th minute leveler. I mean, got England the win yesterday.
You need to set up your own football club.
No, that's some people are listening and wanting to make sure they get what is happening in the
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Law Mefo.
Thank you. The pleasure is always mine.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Dr. Constance Ikoku, thank you so much for being here bright and early. That's it for us here on Daybreak. Up next, it's the morning show. My name is Nkechi Nana.
Thank you for being here. I am Adesua Omoruan. Good morning.
And I am Ndi Amugu. Thanking you for watching.